Been posted.
Yes, it is.
Okay, roll call will show that 4 board members are here. President Crepito is excused, as is student member Annie Terry. Now I'd like to lead you in a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's cute.
Any communications, Dr. Kills?
We have some communication to the board and community. First of all, the high school will hold 2 spring concerts this week, one on Tuesday, May 21st, beginning at 7 p.m., and a second with a Memorial Day Veterans theme on Wednesday, May 22nd, also at 7 p.m. Prom is this Friday, May 24th, beginning at 7 p.m. The Grand March will be held in the main gym at 5 p.m. Prom will take place at the Marcus Center. So we wish all the students a safe prom and a fun prom moving forward. School is in session on Friday, May 24th as a makeup day for one of our severe weather closing days from earlier this year. This day was originally scheduled as a day off for staff professional development, but students, I'm sorry to tell you, you got to come to school this Friday. There is no school, and the district will be closed on Monday, May 27th in observance of Memorial Day. A joint school board, village board meeting will be held on Wednesday, May 29th in the high school library beginning at 7 p.m. This is an open meeting, so we invite the community to come to that. The district received a check from Special Olympics for the 2019 Polar Plunge fundraiser. Schools generated $1,395 for Greendale Special Olympic athletes. So we appreciate everyone who was involved in that fundraiser, and for any of the students and staff who jumped in on that cold, wintry day in February. Middle school spring concerts will be held in the high school gym on the following dates and times. 8th grade on May 29th at 7 p.m., 6th grade on May 30th at 5 p.m., and 7th grade on May 30th at 7 p.m. School board member Thor Misko was named the MSOE Civil and Architectural Engineering and Construction Management Alumni of the Year at a banquet on May 10th. So congratulations on this recognition. Well deserved. Administration has been working on securing sponsors from area businesses for the marching band's travel to the Rose Bowl Parade. In the past week, we've received confirmation on 2 business sponsorships, both at $25,000 from VIP Photography and C.G. Schmidt. So we appreciate their support of the program and the students, and we're excited with those sponsorships. Thanks to all the community members who participated in the community conversation a couple of weeks ago. The next community opportunity will be community input in late July when the Coalition for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion hosts an alignment session for the community-wide strategic plan. So we invite people to come to that, give their feedback on that, so that we can move forward with that strategic plan. And finally, I want to take a moment to thank Todd Ieski, our business services manager. He's going to be leaving us. This will be his last official board meeting before he moves on into the private sector, continuing to work with schools and districts around business management, different business models, and doing some professional development with administrators with the next position he takes. So congratulations on that. Thank you for all your work in our district over the last several years.
Thank you.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much, Todd. Next on the agenda is Panther Pride, where we will hear from all of our guests here from Canterbury. Can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Good evening, school board and new school board members as well. So I have the privilege of introducing Panther Pride for this month, for this year, for Canterbury. And we're fortunate tonight we'll be talking about purposeful play, which is a project that these guys have been working on for over a year now, with some book study and classroom work, and I'll let them explain what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how it applies and ties into our strategic plan as well. And then most importantly, we have 6 or 7 of Canterbury's finest with us. So I think you know who they are. So without further ado.
Hi, I'd just like to introduce the team. I'm Julie Bauer, I'm the reading specialist. like this. Okay. So I was like, how close? I wasn't sure I could lift it. So I'm Julie Bauer. I'm the reading specialist at Canterbury. Nicole Nault is a first grade teacher. Sue McKenzie is a first grade teacher. Annie Nelson is a reading interventionist and EL teacher as well. Megan is a first grade teacher. And then also part of our group but couldn't be here tonight is Becky Meyer, and she is our math specialist at Canterbury as well. So just a little bit about what we're doing. Okay, thanks. I had the pleasure and the opportunity, the principals and Kim and the reading specialist last year, we all applied to go to the Coaching Institute in New York for the Teachers College. Myself and another reading specialist, Shauna Bartel, got accepted into the program. And I was lucky enough when I was there to actually be at the public school in New York where the author of the book who inspired our workshop, that model that we're working with, Purposeful Play, was the school that she was in and taught in New York City. She no longer teaches there. She's making lots of books and traveling and doing lots of great presentations. But I was lucky enough to be at her school, and I was also lucky enough to have communication with the teachers in that building who really, really talked amazingly and highly about the purpose of play. And in addition to the Purposeful Play workshop and the choice workshop, they drew my attention to a mindset for learning. And it talks about stances, and that's what we'll all be talking about today and what our first graders are part of. I was really inspired when I was there to see how the choice workshop for Purposeful Play brought in the social emotional learning and how it tied in all of our pieces of curriculum. And you're going to see that with our props that we have today, but that are really truly our classrooms. This is some information straight from her book, but play is not a luxury. And it helps understand how to have a safe environment. It's teaching how the language, it's visual and hands-on. It allows all students to be accessible. Everyone can play. Everyone can be part of this experience. The biggest part, I think, that drew all of us was that it connects to every single part of our day. So while they're playing, they're learning how to be flexible and be empathetic and be persistent and resilience, which carries over to our readers workshop and our math workshops and our writing workshops. In play, they're writing and doing math, and they're coming up with all those things. I don't know. I don't know what I did, but I'll be flexible. So it helps develop their creativity as well. We'll give it a try. It helps create their creativity, which then also carries over into all the other aspects of our day. I think one of the biggest things that we've all discovered is that they're starting to take some risks, and the risks are scaffolds. We're there to support them. We're giving them the language. We're helping to teach them how can they problem solve together, how can they work on things as a team and also for themselves. And one of the biggest things that we noticed, and which is another reason I proposed working as a team on this, is that social emotional learning is a really big deal. And we've noticed that as play is being not as prevalent in our classrooms, and it takes away that problem solving skills in their natural environment. And this is one way to really help them use that language. And we've heard all of them using the language towards each other and with each other, like, oh, how can you be flexible? Can you try that another way? And they're doing that within other aspects of the day. And it also helps with that abstract thinking, which is what, when we think about our Bridges math program and we think about Lucy Calkins and how we really want that higher level of thinking, it really draws and pulls all of those pieces together. So we just have a quote here. Scientists have recently determined that it takes approximately 400 repetitions to create a new synapsis in the brain, unless it's done through play, which in that case, it takes 10 to 20. And we just felt that was really powerful. It really goes to show why we feel that this purposeful play and choice workshop, coupled with the mindset for learning lessons, is such an important piece for our young minds going forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Bauer. So you might be asking yourself, what is purposeful play? And so this was our guiding question, kind of like our why too. So purposeful play is a choice workshop, which really works well and coincides well with our readers and writers workshop, so they understand the structure, which we'll get into in a little bit. And it really allows kids to use their creativity. We have lots of different materials that they use throughout the day, such as blocks, art materials. They're using drama centers, and it's just another way to really deepen their learning. Another thing that we've focused a lot on is learning how to collaborate well with each other, work together as a team, solve conflicts, things that you might not always get to conference and see that arise in the classroom. And then it's also a guided approach to our mindset for learning, which we'll talk more about with our stances. You're next.
I don't know what button you hit. I did it. I was flexible. All right, so I was going to talk a little bit about our structure. And again, this is really, really reflective of what we already do with our reading and writing workshop. So it's something that the kids are familiar with. They know how it's going to work. And again, what's important with purposeful play is that we're explicitly teaching them different strategies that they can use to help them solve problems and use some of those executive functioning skills. But then they have an opportunity to see it modeled, and also lots and lots and lots of opportunities to practice it in the classroom with us kind of, conferring with them, guiding them, helping them through some of the difficult times. So it starts just like with the other workshops with a mini lesson where we focus on the habits of the mind or different strategies that will help them. We also create charts in the classroom. We've really steered towards doing the charts ourselves to making them more created by the kids where they're doing the writing and they're kind of doing some of the solving. And then the kids kind of go off. They choose different centers or themes that they're going to focus on for whatever time we set. Sometimes it's 2 weeks, sometimes it's 3 weeks, sometimes it's a focus that we bring in like our social studies curriculum or science, and they're focusing on that. But they kind of work with their group and they plan, and then they're going to go ahead and work in their groups. And then the mid-workshop is kind of like where we can stop when we notice something really good that's going on, like where a student was being flexible or a student was showing empathy for one another, and we kind of call attention to that and have them sort of name some of the things that we're seeing in the classroom. And again, we go back, and the conferring and facilitating groups is, again, just like pulling strategy groups, make sure we're conferencing with kids. And then it all comes together with the share and the reflection, where we come to the carpet, we share what we're doing, we talk about what went well, what didn't go well. Sometimes we set goals for what we're going to do the next time, and that's sort of how it goes. So again, very similar to what we're already doing with our readers and writers workshop.
Okay, we also wanted to take a look at, we were really excited about this, and we wanted to think, well, how does this really fit into our strategic plan here in Greendale? So we took a look at the Vision 2020, and we found a lot of connections between our work and the work that we're already doing in the district. So some of the connections that we're able to make is that purposeful play, or the choice workshop, really does help increase the number of students who feel a sense of purpose and relevance to the concepts and skills being taught. So students really are having opportunities to maybe act out careers. That could be something that is coming in Choice Workshop, and just connect with that high level of engagement. Something else that we're doing is project-based learning, and that was we've kind of hit on some of that already. But students are, again, having that high levels of engagement within purposeful play. Another thing that we're doing is we've been really taking a look at our social and emotional learning. And through the stances, or the habits of the mind that are listed right over here, the optimism, resilience, persistence, flexibility, and empathy, we're really building that emotional development, the self-concept, and the social competence. And this choice workshop gives them the chance to not only hear about what those things are, but also the opportunity to practice and be provided feedback. So not only are they learning what it means to be empathetic, but they're going to give some of that language a try in their choice workshop, and then they're getting feedback from the teachers on that. It also fits in with inclusion. Like it was mentioned earlier, this is something that's accessible to everyone. students who are English learners are having the opportunity to have a real environment in which they are practicing and learning language in a safe space.
Thank you. All right. Kind of like Annie and Julie have all talked about, along with purposeful play, we also were using the Mindset of Learning book. The Mindset of Learning book is all just about the difference between having a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Fixed mindset being that you just are who you are and there's nothing I can do to grow or change, whereas a growth mindset would be I can always change, I can always learn, I can always grow. And with our growth mindset, we have been learning about our stances or our traits of having a growth mindset. And those 5 stances are optimism, flexibility, resilience, empathy, and persistence. Basically what we did was we took kind of the purposeful play structure and we kind of practiced these characteristics or these traits, and like Annie just said, kind of reflected on it, did different activities with it. Like empathy, we talked a lot about identifying feelings with ourselves and others. We've been using a lot of I statements like I'm feeling this way because of this. We talked about with optimism having like an inner coach versus an inner critic and kind of understanding like what's just a glitch, something that we can easily get through and work through versus something that is a more problematic situation that we need help with. So what we are going to do is my students are going to come up and they are actually going to introduce what these stances mean. We only got through 4 of them, so we don't have resilience, which is totally okay. So we're going to just talk about the other 4. So let's go, friends. Do they need mics too? Or can we come like up there? Is that okay? We can turn the microphone around. Okay. You guys want to come in the front over here? Okay. Oh, okay. That's perfect. All right. So this is our poster that we made our own definition. So these 3 wrote them for us. And they just kind of talked about what it is, and then we've been exploring these words through read-alouds. So we have a couple of read-alouds down here that the kids are going to kind of tell you like how the read-alouds fit with our words and our definitions. So,
if they could introduce themselves?
Yeah.
sure, you got to say your name.
My name is Will, and
So they can see the poster. Okay.
and empathy means like keep positive. Do like ask questions how people are feeling, like I messages. And here's the thing we wrote with it: figure out how classmates are feeling and try to help them.
Do you want to talk about the book that goes with it?
The book that goes with it is Yo Yes, because this kid doesn't have a friend, and the one on the left is like helping him have a friend, so he's being real empathetic, and he's helping the other have fun.
Perfect. Who's up? Say your name first, okay?
My name is Hannah, and my name is Hannah, and optimism means to keep positive thoughts. And the book that goes with it is Josh Can't Dance, because he is optimism when he can't dance.
And he keeps
And he keeps trying.
until he gets it. Perfect. Okay.
My name is Ella, and persistence means don't stop and keep on trying. And the book that it goes with is a camping spring with Mr. Megan.
Mr. McGee.
Mr. McGee.
And what happened in that book?
And the bear was being persistent because he didn't stop and he was keep on trying for the marshmallow.
Perfect. You're up. Got one more.
Flexibility means like keep trying. Do different paths. Like if things don't go your way, you can keep trying, like adding parts onto things like you don't like. And if things don't work out, you can change them. In the book that came with it, the most magnificent thing. So this girl had an idea of making a really cool thing, and she didn't get it right, so she kept trying and trying and trying, and she finally got it in the end.
What did she do to get it?
She kept changing parts on it.
Awesome. And then did you want to tell who was the last? Who wants to talk about Ish? Ella. Oh, well, Hannah, I gotta do it then.
Ish is when he was drawing and it didn't work out, and then his sister tried to said that his drawings were good and tried to make him feel better.
So she had
Empathy.
awesome. All right, thank you.
Just to coach little Ella. Soccer. Broken arm.
Oh yeah. These are just some pictures of my class. There's not too many of them, but we have like a Play-Doh station for a lot of it, and so a lot of the times the kids have been building like restaurants and different things out of Play-Doh. The student in the middle, we used this as a really great example of being persistent, because he made that entire thing all by himself, and he kept trying and trying. It probably took him like 30 minutes to get it all connected, and he never gave up, and he was just super persistent, so that was a great example. And then this is just, the last picture is just a picture of some kids making things at our art station. I think that's it. Who's talking first? Okay.
I am Bryn. My name is Levi.
Did it not show up? Hang on, sorry, hang on. You have to be flexible, right?
Really doing his time in here.
I'm persistent. Great job.
Data's here to help too.
It's very naughty and wants.
So we're going to explain what our choice time proposal is, and this is kind of how kids get started and get their learning thinking, and kind of get ready to talk as a group. So the first part.
So the first part is there's an ideas part, and then there's characters. There's setting and So for the ideas, we say what we want to do for what our idea is gonna do for our station that we're gonna create, and we talk together, saying sometimes we do a tally mark of what we want to do and of who is gonna we're all talking together to say what our ideas are. And then there is setting. Setting is where we want to do it.
like somewhere in our room where we want to do it, and we'll think that we will have the most stuff that we need for it, like the most kind of like space.
And there's the characters, which is like say if you were building a police station, you would need like cops and sheriffs or whatever. And then the tools would be what you would need to build your area.
So this is a water park that one station built. So there's like the water here, and then there's kind of like security cameras, it looks like. I mean slides. I don't really know. I wasn't in this group. And there's like a lifeguard, and they like worked hard on like what they're gonna think and where they're gonna like put it. Like if they're gonna have like enough room or not. Do you wanna talk about it? So the top two pictures are, one of them is pet care. That's one of our old stations. So like what they're taught, we worked together to build pet care, and they were like saying like what kind of materials they needed. And then the next picture on the top is a village club. That's one of our newer stations, and we're working together. You can see like there's a computer, and we're making like little chairs, and we made like a lot of stuff for that, like a bird's eye view of it.
And the bottom two, is pictures of us working together to build our stations.
All right. So in the top three, we're like talking together and saying like where we're gonna put this, and working together like saying like if we want to because we usually get like one huge cardboard box, and we're talking about like what we can all use out of that, and like if we want to cut the flaps off to use it, or if we just want to leave them on.
Wow. We will do this. Okay, so I have three friends. Do you want to introduce yourselves? Lucy's going first.
I'm Lucy, and
So we'll do this. So we're going to talk about what we do when we're working in our groups.
When we're working in our groups, and we have a problem, it could be a glitch, bummer, or disaster. A glitch is when it's a little problem and you have to be flexible and have ideas, and you have an idea to work the problem out. And then a bummer is a problem with two people, and you use words like stop, and you be flexible and let it go. And you can use iMessages like I feel angry when you're not listening to me, and I want you to listen to me. And then if they don't listen, you tell the teacher. And we never have disasters because a kid cannot do that all by themselves.
For 911 and we call the president, right?
Yeah.
We don't do disasters. All right. I'm going to pass to introduce yourself first.
My name is Karina, and the stances help us work together, and it helps you be optimism and resilience, persistence, and flexible and empathetic, when we're we put those on our active board, they can remind us to use those strategies if we need them.
My name is Nathan. Okay. When things are hard, this is what you do when things are hard. First, you say your name, and then try to use a calming strategy that you think will calm you down the most, or else it might not work.
What's a calming strategy that you might use?
Take deep breaths.
And then what do?
You think about it before you do it. And you say the strategy and probably whisper so it's not weird.
So it's not
Yeah. Yeah. Think of positive. Think of good things and positive things.
What do we call those?
Brain hurters and brain helpers.
What's a brain hurter?
Brain hurter is when you say something bad when you can't use, when you're failing on doing something.
Yeah, you say something that's good. What's something you should say?
Instead of saying I don't like this, you should say like this is not harder. I can do it.
I can do hard things. Right? This is
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to talk real quickly about our pictures up there?
Okay. So the first two that are on the left, the one on the bottom on the left is about we pretended to have a school inside of a school. Then we had someone as a student, which is already a student. They were already a student.
When we're working on it, what's the bottom part? What are we actually getting into?
We're practicing to see it.
Practicing like to see it. Very good. All right. Can you, who's next? Sabrina May. Tell us what's happening in the middle two pictures.
And in the middle two pictures, on the top middle, I think that was a Play-Doh station, and I think they were doing a bakery, and they are working together so they can be a success. And on the bottom middle, we were actually playing, and we were in a restaurant, and we kind of mixed together our clubs because there was the vet station and the restaurant. So the vet station went over to the restaurant to get a meal.
And then the last two pictures is me and my group, the top one. That was when you're sharing a poster about empathy that we worked hard on doing together to make a great poster about empathy. And then the bottom one was the grocery store. And they're kind of like celebrating and going to each other's group. And we also shared the carpet with the restaurant.
Do you want to share what you two ladies made real quick, and then we're going to go? So real quickly, I just wanted to point out, so one of the things that's so important about purposeful play and these stances is that they actually take it with them wherever they go. And on their own, these two ladies wanted to create some booklets about purposeful play, teaching you about the stances and what they think is super important. So we made some copies, and we can just put them on the desks. And did you really want to tell your joke, Nathan? Okay, Nathan would like to end with a joke that has to do with empathy.
What did the toilet say to the other toilet? You look flushed, can I help?
What an ending. All right, do you want to put those on the table? And if they want to look at them, they can have copies.
Use that one.
And I don't want them anymore.
That was great.
Okay.
Any comments or questions from board members?
I just want to start by saying one of my favorite things about our board meetings is when the students and teachers come in and share. So for the staff in particular, thank you for taking time out of your evenings. And for the parents and students, thank you guys for being here tonight. One of my favorite books is Mr. McGee's Camping Spree. So you guys all read that book? So are the stories that you are reading, are those helping you out with some of these stances that you've been learning about? Yeah. And they're fun, too, aren't they? Good. Well, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. It was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, what impressed me the most was the emphasis on the traits that we want from all of our Greendale students, and really nice reminders for all the adults in the room. We all could work on those traits. First among them, I think of, is flexibility when things don't always go your way. So it was a really, really great presentation. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. Thanks for all your efforts. It was really well done.
The other toilet. Oh, thanks.
That was amazing.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks.
Moving on with our agenda, it's time for comments or questions from visitors. Persons wishing to address the board are asked to state their name and address for the record, and limit their comments to only one at a time, and through 3 minutes, or 5 minutes if representing a group. Citizen comments shall be limited to a total period not to exceed 30 minutes. So at this time, would anybody like to make a comment?
How you doing, school board and everybody in the room? I welcome everybody, and I'm glad everybody is here to obtain what we have to offer as a group. I do represent Page, and what the green shirts represent, I'm sure you guys are all wondering what are these green shirts all about, and I'll get into that as we proceed through this meeting and all that kind of good stuff.
And pardon me, sir, if you could say your name.
My name is Kendall Curtis. I reside at 5316 Olympia Lane in Greendale. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. So there'll be more green shirts as we proceed and all that kind of good stuff in different meetings and things like that. But I'll go ahead and continue on with my presentation. I represent Page, Parents Advocating for Greendale Equity. That's what the green shirts stand for. Our mission is to represent and amplify the voices of those students and parents and community members who feel they're not adequately heard or respected by Greendale, especially in the public schools. To help Greendale School District and the community at large to make a priority to embrace its growing diversity, to become more aware of the systematic racism in its past and present, and to become more welcoming, a more welcoming community for all. Greendale has achieved much success over the years. Between the school board and village board, many people have retired and achieved individual success. At the last meeting I attended, there were a lot of congratulations and picture taking. Between all the school board members and leaders of Greendale, there's over 40 years of experience in the room right now. We've got the vice president, we've got the president of the school board here present right now, which is great because that's over 40 years of experience collectively between everyone in this room right now. Greendale High School was founded in 1953. Since then, the school has gone on to win countless awards and send many students to college. Greendale is now attempting to make diversity a priority. As everyone entered, I'm sure everyone saw the faces in the hallway on their way into the library. Those faces represent greatness. Those faces are all majority white faces. There are no minority faces represented, or very little minority faces represented in the walls as you enter into the Greendale, into this library, so you all know. However, we don't understand how a student of Greendale High School like Mrs. Shanice Knox, sitting to my left there, like Mrs. Shanice Knox, can be left behind because she was called the N-word by a fellow classmate. We don't understand how a majority of the faces of success are majority white in the halls as you enter the library. We don't understand how the attendance rates of minorities in Greendale schools and the village aren't improved. We don't understand how Shanice Knox wasn't made whole after explaining to the school board that she was called the N-word daily by a fellow classmate at the last meeting that I attended here. We don't understand how the police did nothing to make Shanice whole after being verbally abused, and we don't understand how a person was promoted before Shanice was made whole. I heard that there was a person that was promoted to a different position here at the last meeting prior to now. And now Shanice is still sitting there, and she's still not made whole or anything else by this board. As you hear, there are several things we don't understand. Was Shanice made whole? We don't know. Was her record made clear so she can enjoy success? We don't know. I don't know. Is being called the N-word daily acceptable in Greendale? I don't know. Is part of Greendale's diversity plan, is that part of Greendale's diversity plan? How is it that over 40 years of education between the school board and city government that, mind you, are not here? None of the Greendale trustees are here right now. So right now it's more or less the school board on their own. And I would think that you guys would be working in conjunction with the city government as well as the school board, but they're not present right now. If they are, they can raise their hand, but I don't think they're here. Shanice had to deal with racism. Have our officials ignored racism for years? We'd like to know which member of the school board took a public stand against racism prior to Shanice's incident. What did they do? Why wasn't it successful? Why and when did they stop trying? If anybody has, feel free to raise your hand, voice it, no problem. To the administration present now, if you've known about racism in the community and the school and you've done nothing, shame on you. If you haven't known about the problems with racism and you've done nothing, shame on you. Greendale has enjoyed success over the years with everything but racism. I've been in Greendale for 7 years. We will not keep silent like our school board leaders have been for years. In closing, we demand a public apology be given to Shanice Knox and for it to go into the weekly newsletter for Greendale called The Village Views, and to go into the Greendale Schools letter called The School Connection. We also ask Greendale's minority population in the village school to be entered into the weekly newsletter so the community can enjoy the success as growth. As residents, we expect to learn what happened to Shanice Knox. Was she made whole? If not, why? If she was made whole, how? I thank you all for your time. That's it.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comments from visitors this evening?
All right, Shanice Knox, 5902 Dendron Lane. Okay, so as I heard today about comm strategies and things that kids are doing at the schools, I was curious to know, what are the schools doing about racism? What are they learning? What are the teachers teaching them about it? And what are they saying to them and saying that the N-word is not okay and racism doesn't exist in our school? I have been through so much since the beginning of the year, and I'm just not hearing an apology from Dr. Kiltz after being at the school since September and haven't heard anything since the issues took place. I appreciate Dr. Kiltz apologizing to me in the focus group a week ago, but what is shocking to me is that he told my mother that he will not remove my athletic code, which is hard to understand because if you can remove the suspension, I don't know why the athletic code can't be removed as well. There has been plenty of racial issues besides mine that have happened years, decades before me, and what was done, what was reported, what has been said upon those. It would be hard to move forward without the athletic code removed. I'm going to continue to speak for others besides my issues at Greendale High School because there is much to be done. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I'm reading on behalf of Deania Marriott. My name is Laura Biller. She had to leave, and I live at 5234 Lakeside Drive. She says, I am here on behalf of my daughter who was harassed with racial slurs. After months of media attention and lawyers, we finally got to the point where an apology was given, a diversity forum was held, and a steering committee was formed. Now we're at a standstill because Shanice has an athletic code of conduct violation on her record, something she received because of a wrongful suspension. The student code of conduct should be removed. Why is Shanice continually being punished? Greendale School District should be moving toward true equity and not just checking a box. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments from visitors this evening?
Good evening. My name is Nat Godley. I live in the M section. Give my address before. So I was generally impressed, pleased at least, with the steps taken so far, particularly the conversation about welcoming diversity. I saw that as something very positive. And certainly in my working group, in my discussion group, there was some very positive discussions, revelations, realizations. But that's only a start. The conversation has to go on. It has to continue. It has to evolve. The listening has to continue. It has to evolve. It has to, referring back to those wise, sixth graders? No, fourth graders? I don't know. Has to be flexible. And many of us stand ready to assist in this effort to continue to bring up voices, as Mr. Curtis said. Part of our purpose is to amplify the voices of those who have not historically been heard in communities like Greendale. It is, in fact, our main purpose. But as he also said, steps like the discussion on welcoming diversity has no weight. They have no credibility without concrete action to remedy the specific wrong that started this whole discussion. And that is, of course, the wrong that was done first by another student, but then compounded by actions of different levels of the administration. Now, I'm someone that thinks in systems. I think in abstract terms. It's how I was trained as a historian of colonialism. That's my day job. But it's also what is comfortable to me as a white person. Even those of us who are committed to anti-racist work can sometimes fail to see the trees for the forest, to flip that analogy. Racism is a system, but it's also a series of very specific injuries and acts. And unless we address the injuries that we have responsibility and the ability to change, any work that we do on the system doesn't have the traction, doesn't have the impact, and doesn't have any real credibility, because it doesn't require us to look at ourselves deeply and to think about, well, how have I done wrong? How have I made a mistake? How have we, how's my organization made a mistake? And that I think is what we're calling for. That is what is lacking here. That there's progress on the systemic level, but it has to be matched with progress and remediation, repair on the specific level. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, my name is Erica Young, again a parent to 2 children in the Greendale School District. I live on Hill Ridge Drive here in Greendale, and as a 14-year-old, I was working at my first job at Burger King, and a white male came through the drive-thru angry, and he called me a black B-I-T-C-H. And my manager was a white male, and he told him, at that time, I refused to help him any further. I'm not going to help you. You're disrespecting me, and I walked away. My manager, who was a white male, said, you can take your money and you can leave this restaurant because I'm not going to allow you to disrespect my staff member. I was in that same situation as an adult, but it wasn't me. It was somebody else that was the victim. And a white male said, and served me to one of my coworkers. And the manager did not address the issue. She just said, oh, I'll serve him. Why do I share that story, those stories? Because when you are called or disrespected for the very essence of who you are as a person, you're a woman, you're disrespected because you're a woman, you can't do anything about that. You can't change that. It's who you are. It is intimidating. And anyone who has never related to you have no right to tell you how you should respond. I am impressed that Shanice stood up for herself. She spoke up, and she said, this is not okay to her classmate. Because if you've never been called anything and been hated for the very existence of who you are, you have no right to tell her how she should respond. She didn't get physical. You have no right to tell her how she should have responded. You should listen to her truth. I wonder if you all have thought about the impact that this code is going to have on her and the trouble that she has to go through as she seeks to pursue her life, her college education. I'm in the process of going to graduate school, and I am asked, do you have any misconducts as it relates to your academic experience? I have to answer those questions, so I'm sure she's going to have to answer those questions. Consider if it was your child. If it was your child, consider. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments from visitors this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on with the agenda. First, there are the minutes from the previous meeting. And was there an addition or something? No, that was fixed? Okay, then never mind. I am looking for a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes.
I move, go ahead.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the previous board meeting on May 6, 2019. Any further discussion? Then I'm looking for a roll call vote.
Yes.
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 And I'm yes. Motion carries. Next, we have the financial reports.
Yep. So as we wind down in 18-19, we continue to monitor monthly, and so far we're still looking good compared to budget. Our revenues compared to budget right on where they were last year. Our expenditures actually tracking a little bit below where they were last year compared to budget. So things are looking good as we wrap up 18-19. Continue to monitor it through the end of the fiscal year, and then we'll talk about the 19-20 budget here in a little bit.
Okay. Any further discussion about the financial reports? All right. And I'm looking for a motion for checks and disbursements.
Motion to approve the checks and disbursements?
With the amounts, please.
Hold on. Motion to approve checks and disbursements of $680,202.10.
And the payroll?
As well as payroll for $2,992,858.49.
There's been a motion to approve checks and disbursements of $680,202.10 and payroll of $2,312,656.39 for a total of $2,992,858.49.
I second.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'm looking for a roll call vote.
Yes.
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 And I'm yes. Motion carries. Business, approving personnel of a teacher appointment and teacher resignation. Any further comments? Okay, from HR. And I'm looking for a motion in a second.
I move approval of the teacher resignation and the teacher appointment as outlined in agenda item 4.1.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the teacher appointment and teacher resignation. Any further discussion? Then I call for a roll call vote.
Yes.
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 And I am yes. Motion carries. Next, school lunch prices in agenda item 4.2.
Yep, so we talked last month about how it looked like we would not have to raise our lunch prices for next year based on guidance from the DPI, that we had a positive fund balance in our Fund 50 as of December 31st. So we did get clarification, and we do not need to raise our lunch prices. We are running at a surplus in Fund 50, so we are recommending approval from the board of no increase for next year for our lunch prices.
Any further comments or questions about school lunch prices?
Thanks for also sharing the information on the other information that was not needed for this. It was just helpful for me to acclimate myself with what the prices are for outside of the required school lunches for adults and then also for the breakfast. So thanks for sharing that information.
Any other comments? Okay, then I'm looking for a motion in a second to approve the school lunch prices for this coming school year.
I move approval of the school lunch prices as outlined in agenda item 4.2.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for approval of the lunch prices. Any further discussion?
I just want to say, I was going to say this earlier, but I think it's great that we're able to maintain that for families. And is this the second or third year that we've?
I believe actually it's a third year in a row.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that's great.
Okay, then I'm looking for a roll call vote.
Yes.
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 And I'm yes. Motion carries. Moving on to agenda item 4.3, the CISA #1 agreement.
So every year we engage in a cooperative agreement with CISA #1. For those who may not know, CISA provides us with services at a subsidized rate for certain positions that it doesn't make sense for us to hire in itself. So that's the great thing with this collaboration regionally with other districts. So when you take a look at the overall contract for 1920, you'll see that the largest expense on there is for one of the alternative programs, Turning Point. We continue to have students who are engaged in that program and doing very successfully in that program. And then you'll also see an educational audiologist. Again, it doesn't make sense for us to hire a full-time audiologist, so to share that position with other districts through CISA makes a lot of sense moving forward. So in working with the administrative team, what we're proposing in terms of that contract with CISA #1 for the 1920 school year is a contract amount of $58,385.42.
Can you help me remember what Turning Point exactly does?
Colleen, would you like to explain?
Sure. Turning Point's an elementary alternative program that provides very small class sizes, approximately 6 to 8 students with 2 adults, and a very structured environment for some of our students who need that level of support.
I just had a question about the educational audiologist that you mentioned.
Mhm.
Is that 260 hours then, or what is that 260?
No, their units, I believe their units are 15-minute increments.
15-minute, okay. So I realized there were probably not 260 students.
No, and she provides services, for example, for some of our students who are deaf or hard of hearing. They may have specialized equipment, FM systems, and that sort of thing. We require her expertise in order to provide that.
And this does not entail the actual equipment, the district, that's a separate cost then? Or?
When we purchase the equipment itself, that's a separate cost.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
How does we're obviously budgeting for 2019, 2020, and I was just curious, how does that work within CISA if you don't use those units? Is it use it or lose it, or is it kind of a rollover, or do you true up at the end of the year? Just curious how that works.
It depends on the service. So, Turning Point, for example, they have historically charged by semester. So you purchase that seat. So if we didn't need it, we may be able to sell that back to them, or they would try to sell it to another school district. The other services, they will do kind of an even up, because it's difficult to predict exactly how many units we will end up using. So they'll do that as a final. I think the bill comes in 2 increments. Is that correct? Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking on both sides of the fence. If you didn't
Right.
use them, but then also I would hate for us to not provide services to a student because we met our 74 hours with our speech pathologist. So guess what? You have to wait till next year.
We wouldn't be allowed to do that by
Figured as
law.
much.
Nor would we want to. Even if we were allowed to do that, we still wouldn't do that.
Very good. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
I think it's great that we have the CISAs. I just attended the spring conference up at CISA 6, I think it was, in Oshkosh, and it's just nice hearing all the different programs that are offered to not only to students, but professional development through the CISAs. Gary, you kind of just said it, that things that we wouldn't necessarily be able to do without that extra support. So I'm glad we have that. And they are funded by the state as well, to some degree, right?
They do. They get grant allocations from the state as well, so you can see a listing of the different services they provide that are covered through some of those state and federal grants. The other nice benefit with CISA is just some of the networks they put together. So you'll see our involvement in a number of different networks, including technology, math, and looking at district assessment coordinators.
Out of curiosity, how does this connect or relate to last year, our payments with CISA? Is it pretty much the same, or has it gone up significantly? Or
It is. It's very close in terms of the price. I couldn't give you the exact cost last year, but every year it seems to be really close to that $55,000 to $60,000 amount.
Okay, then I'm looking for a motion and a second for agenda item 4.3.
I move to approve agenda item 4.3, 2019-2020 CISA number 1 agreement.
I second.
There's been a motion and a second for the approval of our 2019 to 2020 CISA number 1 agreement. Any further discussion? Okay, then I'm looking for a roll call vote.
Yes.
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 And I'm yes, motion carries. Next, the approval of the Park and Rec Committee appointments.
So with some of the changes that we've had with that advisory committee for Park and Recreation, there was a need to bring a person forward for approval for the citizen position on that advisory committee. And in taking a look at individuals available, Rachel Bush has been selected and brought forward for the position as the nominee, seeking your approval for the appointment.
I think she is a great choice.
Yeah. How long is that term? Do they have terms? It said it was an unexpired term.
Through June 2020 is this term, and then it has to be re-upped.
So is it a 2-year or 3-year
It's a
term?
Yeah, 3-year appointment, or, yeah. And I was in the midst of mine when I got elected, so that's why she's fulfilling the rest of my term.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so I'm looking for a motion.
Motion to approve the Park and Rec Committee person.
I second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the Parks and Rec Committee appointment as outlined in agenda item 4.4. Any other further discussion? Then I'm looking for a roll call vote.
Yes.
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 And I'm yes. Motion carries. Next, review of the budget in agenda item 5.1.
Yeah, so the first thing to make sure I emphasize is that this is looking at the preliminary budget. The final budget for 1920 will be approved in October when all the final factors are known. And we are in the midst of a cycle which makes it more difficult to budget because we are going into a new biennial state budget, which means that our revenue factors are not known at this time. So we are looking at all the information and what the governor has put out and what things that we're hearing. We are currently using a $200 increase in our per pupil amount for a revenue increase. The governor has, that's what the governor has in his budget. There has been some support in the legislators. There's also been a little bit of maybe they won't get that much. But I think most districts are feeling pretty comfortable that I think they will get to the $200 increase per pupil. There is talk also of increasing the special education reimbursement from the state. We have not built that into this budget to be a little more conservative in case that doesn't happen. So there could be a little bit more put into that, but maybe a little bit less in the per pupil. So we budgeted the $200 increase on the per pupil side. We have not budgeted any increase on the special education aid. And again, when the final budget is approved in October, those factors would be known. With the $200 increase, the last few years' increases have been on the state per pupil aid, which is 100% paid for from the state. The governor has proposed putting back on the revenue limit, which means that $200 increase then is split, depending on how you are in the formula between the state and taxpayers. This isn't true for every district, but for us, whether the increase is on the state per pupil aid or the revenue limit, we still get the same spendable dollars. So for the budget purposes, we put that on the revenue limit because that would increase our taxes and mill rate, make those a little bit more conservative. But if they decide to move that back to the per pupil aid and not look to increase property taxes, we'd still have the same budgeted spendable dollars. So if we look at the revenue limit, which is our main factor for revenue in our general fund, we are also looking to, we're looking at a projected 48 FTE membership. Again, membership being resident students that go to our district or go to another public school district, of an increase of 48 FTE for our September count. May seem a little bit high. Remember last year, this September, we had a 90 FTE increase, and the projections that Julie does and look at as well, I think that's even, I think that's pretty accurate and even a little more on the conservative side. So we feel pretty comfortable with that 48 FTE increase. We projected a very small decrease in summer school FTE just because of the construction going on. There's a few less classrooms, but I think actually with everything in the classes registered, we probably will be back to where we are even. But for this budget, it's a slight decrease in those minutes. So with that, the revenue limit, how we're funded, uses a 3-year average of our FTE. And because we've had big jumps these last couple years, that would, our 3-year average would increase by 53 FTE. That again is used, that per pupil amount, to generate your revenue limit authority. And so with that, if those FTE projections are correct, that would be about a $595,000 increase on the revenue limit just due to our membership increase. So you can see a significant, almost $600,000 of just from our increasing membership, which would not be there if we had flat membership. And then with the $200 increase per pupil on that revenue limit, that gives us an additional $487,000 of additional revenue from that per pupil increase. So about $595,000 just from our membership increase, and then from the $200 increase to our per pupil times our membership, that gives us about $487,000 of additional revenue on the revenue limit. There's also, the revenue limit has some exemptions to it. One of them being our energy efficiency exemption. So we have two projects that we did back in 2015. We did the HVAC at the middle school and some windows. And then a couple years ago, we did the LED lighting in all the schools. With the DPI gives you a exemption in the revenue limit to pay for those debt payments, but then they reduce that exemption by any energy savings we have towards that. So pretty much during this time period, the energy savings are going back to the taxpayers, and then we done paying off that debt, we would absorb back the energy savings. So this year we'll have a full year of energy savings in the LED project. Last year was about half a year. So we'll have a less of an exemption because we'll have more energy savings that reduce that exemption. We also have exemptions last year for transfer of service, which if a student either with an IEP or English language learning needs comes in from another government entity and we have an increased cost, we can have that exemption. And then we had prior year unaccounted open enrollment where we didn't know about the resident until after the September count. So we had those exemptions. We're not budgeting for those now. We may very well have those in again, but without being known, we did not budget for them at this time. So the reduction in the exemptions is about $84,000. And with all that, the increased membership FTE, the $200 increase per pupil on the revenue limit, and the reduction in exemptions, looks like there's a little typo there, but it's an additional $1 million of total revenue limit authority for 1920. And then we have that state per pupil aid. Even though there'd be no increase in that, that is also tied to the membership, the same membership using the revenue limit. So the increase in revenue and membership there gives us about $35,000 in additional revenue from that vehicle. With open enrollment, we have 32 students that are graduating this year. And again, although not yet approved by the board, we have budgeted an additional 19 open enrollment seats at the high school. Doing our calculations, found that we are able to add those seats. So we're looking to bring that next month to the board for approval. But for budget purposes, the preliminary, we have those 19 seats at the high school in the budget. And so there's still a net decrease of 13 open enrollment students, and then an increase in the funding amount per open enrollment student. So that's a net $45,000 decrease in our open enrollment revenue.
Todd, is there any issue with, or maybe this is for Colleen, any issue for filling 19 open enrollment seats in high school? I mean, in the past, has that been difficult to fill?
No, I don't.
Is it so late?
I anticipate that we'll be able to fill all of them.
Okay.
I mean, I can't say 100% certain, of course, but I think it's highly likely that we'll be able to fill that.
Okay.
Is it likely that they'll be freshmen, or it could be across the board?
No, we are only looking, we'll be reviewing the enrollment and the grade level that we right now think that there will be some additional spots open is for freshmen.
Okay.
We have to follow the same criteria that we follow the first time. So we look at the minimum class size range, and if we anticipate that we would have space available up to that minimum.
Okay, thank you.
And then we have some miscellaneous revenue that's in there with a few notes. Last year we had focus on energy rebate from our Act 32 project that allowed us to have some more Fund 10 revenue that we will not have this year. We're up for a new Chromebook lease this year, so we have some existing Chromebooks that will be sold. So we have an increase in the sale of equipment. For our facility rental, we're projecting a little bit less than we have in previous years. Part of that is because we'll be shutting down the auditorium right after Memorial Day next year, and so some of the June revenue we had coming in, we hope to still potentially fill that elsewhere, but to be probably more accurate, we're reducing that facility rental by a little bit. And then just our miscellaneous revenue, we get some dividends back for our workers' comp. And although we've had good loss ratios the last few years, and we're mod rate is down, which is good. We did have a large claim last year that affected our loss ratio for last year, and so we project our dividend to be a little bit less than it was in previous years. And just to throw it to with, again, the revenue limit is split between our state equalization and our local property taxes. We are projecting an increase in our state equalization aid as we continue to be property value per member poorer than other districts. And our increased membership gives us more state equalization aid, but it's not more spendable dollars. It just offsets our tax levy. And then in all, we are projecting a Fund 10 increase of about $824,000, or about 2.7% increase for 1920.
Before moving on to expenditures, can you remind me, please, at the top of the page, the transfer of service in prior year, uncounted open enrollment?
Sure. So transfer of service is we are able to get an exemption to our revenue limit, so we're able to have more revenue limit authority. The transfer of service is students either with IEPs or students English language learners that come from another government agency, which could be our next door district or could be from another country, and we have increased costs because of servicing those students. So we were able to get an exemption on the revenue limit for that. Again, just because we have somebody that has high cost needs doesn't necessarily mean we get the exemption. Our costs have to increase as well too. So if we'd have to hire additional staff or additional resources to be able to have that. So we had that exemption in 18-19 because I don't know if it's one or a few students that came in. And we may very well have it for next year, but to be conservative, we're not going to budget anything at this time because we don't know at this point. And the uncounted open enrollment, so we do our pupil count in September, and we count those resident students. And let's say somebody's open enrolling out, we count them as a resident student. We get funded for that, and then we pay an expense to the district that they're going to. In this case, we didn't find out we had that resident student until maybe December. We've already did our revenue limit, so we can't get any more revenue for them, but we still have to pay that other district for the open enrollment out expense. So we have the expense, but not the revenue, so they allow us that exemption to basically pay us back for this year, which we would have missed.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Before you go on to the expenditures, I had a question. We're talking about the $200 per pupil from the state. There has been talk with the legislature not wanting to go that high as a per pupil cost. Is there any concern that way, and should we be budgeting downward more like $150 per pupil instead of the $200?
I mean, that is a good question. It is a possibility. A couple things with that is first, one of the things we've talked about is budgeting accurately as well as being conservative as well too. So what you don't want to do is make a bunch of cuts as well too that you don't necessarily have to. There is some leeway. I do think between that increase and then potentially the special ed funding increase for the state could get up to that amount. I do think there's some flexibility. One area of flexibility to have if it doesn't get to that amount. We have some potential options for some more open enrollment seats potentially. We are budgeting $156,000 into the trust, our OPEB trust, which pays for employees that qualified for that benefit back in 2011. There is over $500,000 in that trust now. We've budgeted and planned to pay out the retirees that are retiring this year. So you could always have it where you could take away money from that, adding to that trust, and just use the trust money and then put it back in again the following year. There could be, depending when the budget comes out, there could be changes to the health insurance plan, which is always a possibility. So, there are potentials, I think, where you wouldn't be in a total scramble if they moved it to, I would think particularly maybe 175. I could see maybe a compromise, which for us would be about $60,000 of revenue. So, but right at this point, we could also get the 200, and they could move the state aid reimbursement to 30%. You could have more as well too. So, but I think what we've seen is most districts at this point are using that 200 and feel pretty confident with that. So.
No, the Joint Finance Committee, I think, is meeting this Thursday to discuss.
Correct.
And WASB has done a nice job helping us formulate letters to send. I've already heard back from Senator Craig, but it would be helpful for all of us probably to message them at some point, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And what may happen could be again, we're in the with this last budget where there's been a $200 and $204 increase, but on the state per pupil, so the state's paying the entire amount. If you put that on the revenue limit, it gives districts that same authority, but it splits it between the state and the taxpayers as well too. So the state wouldn't be on the complete burden for that as well. So that may make some sense, especially since they haven't put anything on the revenue limit the last few years. Mill rates have been dropping, so there may be more, more willing to put something on the revenue limit than increase as well too. But obviously, it's something that the district continue to monitor as we go ahead.
And they're hopefully, I mean, I know they haven't in the past, but are they looking for a June agreement at this point? Or I know you talked about the fall, but to help us out, would it be better for them to be making this obviously sooner?
I believe the legislators said they wanted to submit their budget by June 30th. So it doesn't mean it'll be finalized by then, but yeah, I mean, I think that's their goal by probably end of June, but in past years it's gone into the fall. So, so it'll obviously be continue to be monitored as we go ahead.
Our per pupil number is the 2,435. How does that change again? Does that change based on the 3-year average, or is that a different equation than our?
You said the 2,000 was the membership? Yeah, the 2,433. That is our FTE 3-year average. Okay. Yep. So if you look at the revenue limit worksheet that's in there, you can see kind of that bottom box has got the last 3 years of the September count and then the summer. So that 2,433 is the 3-year average.
And we see that increasing a little bit based upon the paragraph you talked about here with the increases that we saw the last couple of years.
Correct, yeah. So you'll see, because of the big jumps the last couple of years, that 3-year average then, yeah, so it's projected to be a 53 FTE increase this year for the 3-year average.
And that's where you get the $60,000 because yours multiple. That's $25 if it gets to 175, which equals the 60,000.
Roughly, correct.
Just want to make sure.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And that is also the same membership that's used on the per pupil aid as well too. So that comes from the same 3-year average.
And what is our special ed count? How does that work from a payment perspective, if that would increase?
We do not get any additional funding per student for special ed. There is, first of all, there's grants. There's the flow-through in preschool IDA federal grants that's used to pay for some special education expenses. And then we have, outside of that, majority of our expenses outside the grant are reimbursed by the state. This year, about 24% reimbursement, and that's what the governor's looking to increase that. First, they talked about going to 60%, then maybe down to 30%. maybe incrementally, maybe 27% this year and 30 the next year. And then we also finally get high-cost special ed aid. So at a high level for any individual student, if their individual expenses are over $30,000, above that $30,000, we're getting reimbursed about 90% of those costs.
Thanks.
Okay. So moving to the expenditure side now. So there's a sheet there with FTE changes for staff that we're looking at. Our raises for our staff that follow the teacher schedule have been budgeted for, and that's the normal schedule that's been around for a while. We are budgeting a 2.5% increase for admin and support staff, which is close to CPI at this time, and then a 1.5% increase for teachers that are above the top of the salary schedule. So the total increase for salary expenses, and that's all our 100 objects, which are salary, stipends, is about $567,000 for all the salary expenditures. On our benefits, right now our initial early renewal estimate for our health insurance is 6.5%, running at a little bit of higher loss ratio than we've had in the past. So to get the budget balanced, we are looking at, we have moved that to a net 5% net increase for insurance to get the budget balanced. And in this budget, looking at reducing the HRA contribution slightly by $250 for single, $500 for a family. There's also the option of looking at a premium share that the employees would pick up that would make up for that roughly $55,000 difference. The other piece is our insurance brokers are still working with our provider and hopeful that we could even still get down to a 5% net renewal. So, so in the budget, we're looking to get to that 5%, whether we can, hopefully we can get the renewal down to that 5%, don't have to make changes. Otherwise, looking to make slight changes either to the HRA or the premium share for the employees.
Did you say you would take it down to 250 and 500, or?
By that amount, that would, and doing that would accomplish getting it to the net 5% increase. So right now the reimbursable is $1,750 for a single and $3,500 for a family plan. So it would move it to $1,500 HRA reimbursement for single and $3,000 for a family. And again, our deductibles are $2,000 and $4,000, which are also the out-of-pocket maximum for. So right now, our deductible and out-of-pocket maximum is net from the HRA is $250, $500, and then a potential to be $500, $1,000, which is still very low. So continuing on to that, again, hopeful that the renewal will come in at that 5%, and they will not need to make any changes, assuming other things stay the same. So, and then again, I talked about, and that's and a 5% net increase in the insurance is about $175,000 in health insurance expenses. We're also budgeting the same $156,000 contribution to our trust, and again, to pay for anticipated retirements. So we wouldn't necessarily be taking from the trust and just paying those out as they retire, kind of a pay-as-you-go, even though we do have that trust that's set up now that can be used as well. We have a increase about $80,000 in our curriculum budget for the increased number of high school students in the dual enrollment programs. So we have an increase there.
Was that more than you thought? I mean, it seems like a lot.
It is a lot. We had the dual enrollment academies are new programs that were introduced it was introduced by WCTC, and we had a student go through the first dual enrollment academy in printing, and he's done some work for us now that he's a graduate, and He is a member of the Chamber of Commerce here in Greendale, but he was the first student to go through the program. 2 years ago, we had 4 total students. This year, we had 8, and next year, we have 20. So they are in programs for licensed practical nurse, welding, construction, fire science. There's a couple more, but MATC offers, there's a computer technician one. MATC offers 5 programs, and WCTC offers more programs. 12 of our students will be attending MATC's Dual Enrollment Academy, and 8 of them will be in WCTC's program. There is some grant money that MATC and WCTC have access to, and so some of those programs will be offset by grant money. But at this time, we have to budget for full tuition for all of those. The idea is that at some point, the number of students that are in dual enrollment academies, the cost of that will be offset by a reduction in FTE because they're not taking classes here on site. But with 20 students, it's not impacting us being able to reduce a section or eliminate local staffing because they're just distributing differently. So it is a significant impact, but it is in line with our efforts to career pathways to viable careers and supporting our students in their taking their next step.
Thank you.
So then with that, we're looking at a Fund 10 expenditure increase of the same amount as the revenue, about $824,000, a 2.7% increase for 1920. With our other funds, our Funds 38, which is part of our debt service fund inside the revenue limit, and then 39, which is our referendum debt fund outside the revenue limit. The Fund 39 levy will be increased because of the referendum that was passed last November. Our Fund 41 is our capital expansion fund. We're budgeting another $200,000 to be levied there. The plan is to use, we have some fund balance in 41 now, and with the additional $200,000 levied next year will give us amount enough to look at replacing the high school stadium turf that needs to be replaced. So that would come out of that Fund 41 budget.
How much does that cost again? It's, what is?
About $460,000 or so total. Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's amazing.
Fund 49 is used for our referendum projects. Fund 50, our food service, as we talked about, is self-supporting. We're not projecting any transfer from Fund 10, which is a good thing. We're budgeting an increase about $128,000 in our Fund 80 community service levy, which again is outside the revenue limit, due mostly to an additional school resource officer and then the continuance of the Coalition for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
So to replace the turf, what capital expansion isn't being done? So isn't that typically?
So the capital expansion gives, so in the past we've used it for the pool ramp, additional classroom in the bottom of Canterbury. We've done roofing projects. Brian's done a good job of maintaining those. We haven't had to have those. So we had a little bit of fund balance from last year. We did not have to use that this year for anything. And so with the $200,000 this year, the $200,000 next year, and then the little bit of fund balance we had from last year, we'll be able to pay for that turf then. Yep. And with the referendum projects going on, there wasn't anything else that needed to be projected out of that Fund 41 for next year.
What is the lifespan typically of that turf again? Is it like 10 years or longer?
Technology on the turf has improved drastically, so it's usually a 12-year warranty.
How long have we had this one now?
I think this is our 11th year.
Okay.
So we'd be going on our 12th year.
With all that, with the passage referendum last November, we're going to see an increase in our total tax levy and our mill rate, which we anticipated. The last mill rate impact we had was about 93 cents for the referendum in our current projection. So mill rate, a total mill rate increase of about 89 cents for next year, which is less than. And again, if that $200 increase would end up being on the per pupil aid instead of the revenue limit, then it would be even lower than that as well too. So, and then again, so we show right now a balanced Fund 10 budget. Factors that will affect the final budget include obviously the final state budget, where our revenue factors will be known, the final health insurance renewal, actual resident enrollment for summer school in the September count, any salary turnover savings or increases as new positions are filled, and then we're always looking at potential for more open enrollment seats as well too. So again, this is May, and this will come back to board approval next month. To have a preliminary budget as of July 1st to get the year going, and then will be finalized in the fall when the final factors are known. So there's an all funds list we put together that kind of splits up the revenue and expenditures by area, by fund, some changes, and then the last one, our Fund 80 levy, we tied to expenses as well too. So
When do we find out the health insurance renewal?
I would guess probably in the next few weeks. So it should be soon.
Okay. Well, per usual, Todd, I certainly appreciate the way you lay everything out for us, and makes a very complicated topic more easily to understand, although I still don't feel like I understand everything like I want to. So thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
And also thank you if you're going to pass on this trait to your successor.
I will make note of that.
When we do our budget approval, do we also get, this document with comparables to last year to kind of show where those changes are, or how does that,
We could do that. We have in the past, we can do that. We also put to our budget publication that looks, kind of does it on the revenue side by sources where it's coming from, state, federal, and things, and then expenses by function. That's then published to the community. So, but we can do the changes by fund.
Yeah, it'd be helpful for me, especially as it's the first time I'm actually diving into the specifics of the budget.
Which fund?
Yeah, I would agree. That would be helpful.
Yep. We've got the one last year. We can just set up a easy formula. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Any more comments or questions about the budget? Okay. So moving on, we have policy.
Lots of help.
All right. Sure. Yeah, good.
This is Todd, yeah. It's all him.
So the first policy with the funding proposals and applications, nothing really too drastic. Just kind of wording again. These policies went through a WASB audit, and there was some suggestions we got from the WASB attorney, and then looking at some other districts and how they worded. So basically here that we'll just look for funding sources. In the third paragraph, it talks about if there's a donation or a grant or something where there's a larger project and the grant or donation doesn't cover the entire amount of the project, just that it will be identified what other funds will be used to pay for that project. So, and then the last one, unless board signatures are required, the superintendent can sign on funded projects as well.
No, I know when we met, we appreciated the add to the third paragraph. We thought that made a lot of sense. If you're going to use something different, you need additional sources to acquire grants to have that figured out before accepting other grants.
So the policy for the student activity funds management, again, just pretty common standard legal language. We just added that the activity funds shall be subject to internal audits by school administration, and then they're also, which they are now, they're audited as part of our financial audit, but the district does as well too. So, and then if a student group had dollars available in their student fund and that disbanded, the group with advisement, or the principal with advisement from the group can decide where those funds would go. And if funds remain, then the superintendent would designate where those funds would go.
And as a comment on this one, I know when we talked through it, we just felt that it didn't make sense to bring it back to the board based upon the dollar amounts that were typically in those, just to have it done by the superintendent, assuming that would ever happen, which it is fairly unlikely it would. One, I don't know, is this the opportunity to bring up one? We talked through changing a couple of things as we're updating these to stay consistent, and here we reference school board. In the past, we try to change the other ones to Board of Education. So I just want to make that note of potentially changing this one to do the same. Oh.
This is 4662.1.
And then for the rule for that one, so it's kind of more processes, and these can follow our procedures manual on cash handling, withdrawals, purchasing. Again, some language that the attorney recommended as far as GAAP compliant, and some pretty standard followings for activity funds. Yep. The next one is purchasing. So I made a few changes to this one. Added about how, just a line about how the administrator or program supervisor should be expected to remain within their agreed budget for the year. And then we're looking at a purchase, things that we're looking at. There are some instances where bids are not necessarily required because they might be the only source to get something, maybe an emergency. On the second page, where it says acceptable methods of procurement utilizing federal grant dollars, that comes right from federal guidelines. So that is laws, basically, when anything you're purchasing with federal grants are title grants, are IDA, special ed grants. Those are the regulations you need to follow for those. We are not, there was talk about it, but we are not subject to any, on other funds guidelines to bidding now. We can kind of bid how we want according to our policy. So for our major renovations, construction, we increase that to, we will do it for sure at $150,000 or more, which is matches what the federal guidelines are. Doesn't mean that we can't for projects less than that, and we do it at certain times. We just did one recently, bid for a project that was going to be significantly less than that. But that's basically saying at that level we will for sure bid. And then the performance and bid bonds, basically with the bid bonds, that a company won't come in and low bid. That's not a qualified bid, just to get a job, that they have to be qualified to do the work. And similar to the performance bid as well too. So we're bidding, we're protected that they're going to do the work that they say they'll do. So
this one I can't remember our conversation, but you already kind of touched on it. We're moving from 30,000 to 150,000, and you said that's kind of in line with the federal guidelines.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, I think 30,000 is pretty low to have to do bid out. I think there's projects where it could be $30,000-$40,000 where it may not be advantageous to get by going out to bid to get any lower. May have a relationship already with contractor, things well too. So again, it doesn't mean that we wouldn't, but we wouldn't have to.
Right.
And that was part of our conversation. Went back to the first paragraph where it says whenever possible goods or services shall be bid. So it kind of gets back to this, when it makes sense, if it's something that's unique or different and we're not used to it, we probably should go out to bid, and when not, if it's something that you know, we already have a relationship, we've done certain things, or have to replace something that costs more than $30,000, does it always make sense to go out to bid?
Right. It's the effort alone.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. All right, and then the last one is student transportation services. So we just consolidated a lot here. We're looking at other districts. Their policies were a page or two, and ours was quite long. So there was just certain, like under the open enrollment, we don't need to spell out all that. We don't need to transport open enrollment students. It's the law. There's no need to expand on that. We already took a little bit about the private schools. We talk about how we will, we must provide transportation alternatives for the private schools that qualify, including we are able to do parent contracts, which we do now. And then with students with disability, in the first paragraph, instead of, I think we mentioned that we'll transport all students, including students with exceptional needs. But we're going to transport all students. And then we just have one sentence that was recommended to us about just with students with disabilities and that transportation consistent with their IEPs. With the space available plan, we took some of that wording out because it can be, it's always not clear how much space is available. They will tell us that we can, for the busing company can fit 72 students on a bus, but when you get to middle school and high school level, that's not. So we don't want to say we've got 70 students in the bus, we've got 2 available when they're already overcrowded. So that if people live on the bus and there would be a request to the business office to see if there is actual space available. We don't have that now, so but if our buses are pretty full as our kids, as our enrollment grows, and then for the use of privately owned vehicles, we just put in our language of what from our insurance company what non-staff would need to do in order to drive our students.
So misbehavior on buses, are we relying on the bus drivers initially? I know I've heard from my children stories of principals taking a ride on certain buses because of students.
Yeah, the idea, and unfortunately, we've had quite a bit of turnover with our bus drivers, which is very common industry-wide now. But normally, the drivers will work with our principals beginning of the year to get the expectations down. We've actually talked to the bus company about doing that if we get a new driver as well, to have them kind of go through an orientation, meet with the principals, because each of them will have one of the elementaries, a middle school, and high school. But the principals normally get involved as well too, and if the drivers have an incident where they need to go, the principal needs to know, they'll go right to that school and then work with the principal on it.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments about the policies?
It's not really a policy question, but do we have cameras on our buses?
Yes.
Do students know that?
I don't know. I would think so, but I'm not positive. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it's not like a by chance thing, they're always going, the cameras?
Yeah, they're supposed to be always going, and they do use them. They will pull them in cases.
You have access to review them too, I'm guessing, or administration?
Do we, I know we talked about the student health, nutrition, and wellness piece as a review, but there was no real changes to it. It's just a number. Is that something that comes up at a different time, or is that?
Yeah, they'll bring back up again next year when it's up for evaluation.
Okay.
DPI as well too.
One question I had, and I don't know if it goes back to purchase, but with our transportation, we have our buses that we're doing within District 2, correct, still? And I know that in the past I saw that there was a lot of overtime with that, so that still has to maintain, I think you've said this before, but it has to stay within that budget for, is it buildings and grounds or?
Yes, but we also, we actually do a billing transfer to the organization that uses it. So if it's middle school athletics, we will actually bill middle school athletics and then credit that overtime budget to pay for that without going over what they would normally pay.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
So it's a little deceiving when we see those numbers. Then.
Correct. And I know they're working on that now. They're catching up on grading that, so those numbers will probably come down because they'll credit that.
Okay.
And then expense the group that use the transportation.
Okay. But always within budget, though.
There's still, yeah, I mean, that's still is Brian's still within his budget. And, yep.
And then thanks also for, we spent some time in our policy meeting talking through how to streamline some of the facilities rental pieces, and there's some more work to be done on that, but I think that'll be very nice when it's done and not so.
Oh, yeah, right.
If you don't have to read this every time you want to rent something, that would be, that would be helpful.
Yes.
Deterrent.
Okay, then obviously those will all come back in the next meeting for approval. Moving on to agenda item 5.3, student board member reports. Emma.
Hello. So obviously you guys know we had AP exams last week, and this week we're looking forward to prom on Friday. On Thursday, students are asked to wear their prom t-shirts, so that'll be a fun way to get excited and everything. And also on Thursday, choir students are going to be touring the elementary schools and I think the middle school, maybe just elementary schools. So that's also exciting. The music wing is gearing up for concert week this week. The equity team had a meeting last week and worked on logistics for the Big Brother Sister program, which our first activity is going to be the first week of August, working with incoming freshmen. And Teens with Impact is planning for Mental Health Awareness Week in collaboration with Student Council, which will be taking place next week. What else do I have? Today, Teens with Impact members went to the middle school to give a presentation on alcohol and substance abuse, and we also gave some insight on just high school life in general, managing stress, things of that nature. And 2 weeks ago, I believe, was the first international club meeting where they had a focus on the foreign exchange students and having everybody learn a few things about their culture and life here in the United States. So, yeah.
Teens with Impact, how do you do that at the middle school? Do they have a full assembly, or are you going to small groups? How does that work?
So we go to each home base has about 3 Teens with Impact members. So it's a group about 15 to 20 kids. Okay. Yeah.
Were they well behaved for you?
Uh-oh. They were okay. It's a Monday morning, so what can you expect, right?
Fair enough. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Emma.
Yeah. For the legislative update, a lot of these comments that I prepared were said earlier. But since the last meeting for us, on May 9th, the Joint Finance Committee removed the $1.4 billion from Governor Evers' budget. To some degree, no surprise. On that note, I was looking at these, the Administrators Alliance, and they were projecting and hoping, perhaps this is similar to what you have found, that it would go back up to $450 to $500 million. Does that sound about right? Yes, obviously not everything that Governor Evers hoped to get. And as Kathy just mentioned earlier, keep your eye on the news reports for Thursday, because the Joint Finance Committee will be voting on educational funding, which obviously will set the budget forward. And a lot of times that ends up being what they agree on in the end. Isn't that correct?
Potentially,
so, yeah. So Thursday is a very big day for us to pay attention to.
Do they televise that? I think that's on Wisconsin Eye, isn't it? Breakaway.
Watching it last year.
Okay, board committee reports. Any board committees who have met, or?
Well, I just want to comment, the summer symposium will be in Appleton this summer, July. I can't think of the dates off the top of my head, but it is an equity symposium, and I'm registered so far, and hopefully some of you guys can make it up there, but it sounds like it's going to be a pretty good conversation across the state that'll take place that weekend. So I think just in all the things we've been working on, I think that will be a good one.
I believe we provided information in the district update.
Correct.
So we'll make sure that stays in there as well. If you're interested, work with Miriam.
And I think the NSBA is also having an equity symposium in February at the national level too. So, you know, that's probably a conversation we need to have too, as far as if anyone would attend that.
It is going to be in Chicago, the national conference
Mm-hmm.
this year?
Yes.
It's going to be in Chicago.
But
so
this was
hopefully-
separate. I think that was a separate.
Was it a pre-conference?
It was not there. It was there actually as a
It was a
separate.
separate one.
I can get the information, but there's a separate. I think it's February.
Met with the Greendale Education Foundation. They are all set for schools out at the end of the year. And they have a kickball tournament going on. And they will also be doing the food truck frenzy on June 19th down at the community center in partnership with the Lions. So look for those two things coming up on Education Foundation.
What's the date of that again? The school's out, is it the 11th?
June 11th.
11th.
And Park and Rec meets on June 12th. So I look forward to having Rachel join the committee.
Nice. All right, for community calendar review, there's obviously the big concert this coming Wednesday. I noticed earlier online that it benefits the Veterans Memorial.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure how that's going to work. Is that just going to be pass the hat, or?
I think that's what they plan on doing. I
Yeah.
know the music is going to be featuring military music
Nice. Okay.
to honor the vets.
Very cool.
Right.
Obviously, there's the Memorial Day Parade as well coming up. And then I had never heard of this particular event. Maybe somebody here knows about the Perennial Plant Exchange that is on Saturday the 1st in the CLC back parking lot at 9:30.
You have to bring plants?
Yeah, I mean, exchange tells me that that would be the case, so I don't know.
I'll take some.
Yeah, I'll take some too, exactly. And that leads us into additional comments from any visitors.
Hello, David Gaith, 7448 Hill Valley Court. I'm also the pastor of Greendale Community Church across the street, and I just want to share a couple observations about tonight. I just want to wait till the whole meeting was done. The first of all, I love the whole thing about purposeful play. I think children learn more by playing and interacting than they'll ever get out of a book, so I hope you continue to encourage that. And I hope you can encourage it with students through high school, because I just think it's really important. I'm a huge fan of the Montessori method as well. So there's that. The second thing, I stand here a bit troubled because I heard 6 people speak very passionately about an issue that's been facing this board and the community since September. And I must admit, this is my first meeting where I sat through the whole meeting. But I did not hear any addressing of their concerns, which concerns me, and this is why it concerns me. I serve a church of 450 people, and if I had a board meeting and 6 people came into that board meeting and shared the same concern, and then I got through the whole board meeting and the board chose not to address it in any way, shape, or form, I can guarantee by Tuesday morning there are people be saying, why the hell didn't you do your job? To me. And I feel like these people were very passionate, they were very calm, they were very mannered. We appreciate good manners in Greendale. And there was nothing said to them like, this is on our agenda for this date. We are having further discussion on this. And that could have been said, and I think that would have gone a long way. The impression that was giving is that this is not going to be addressed tonight or in the near future, and that bothers me. The third thing I wanted to say is that I went to the equity discussion that was held 2 weeks ago 2 weeks ago tomorrow, in the multipurpose room. And I was very pleased that I understood they prepared for 50 people, and they had 3 times that many. I got 3 minutes. I got it. I'm not going to be up here too much longer, unless I start preaching, and then you're stuck. But anyway, I think you prepared for 50 people and had about 150 people, which I thought was really, really a good turnout for that event. The circle that I sat in, we had 12 people, 7 of who are from Greendale. Well, actually more than 7 were from Greendale, but 7 of them were white people from Greendale. Either they live here or they work here. And then we had 5 people who were either from outside the district, former students who came in to Greendale for their education. And we had 3 community people, adults, who live here in Greendale. And the story that sticks with me the most is people who I found out live less than 300 feet from me. Who knew? I've lived in that same house for 17 years, they for 15, and we don't even know each other. But what struck me was when they spoke about living here for 15 years, and they're Latino, and they still don't feel like they're included. And then there was a Latino student who graduated in 2017 who said though he went here for 4 years, he never felt like he fit into our school. That has nothing to do with our not being nice people. I think we try and be nice. We try and put a good face on. We try and do our best. It has to do with our being good people, with going the extra mile to make sure that the things that we want to happen, happen. And I feel like we have a group of people who very much is saying to us, we are not being heard. And nothing that transpired tonight helped me to believe that they were being heard. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Dave. Just one thing about your comment about kind of the lack of comments. Speaking for myself, I perhaps could have said more. But if a topic isn't on the agenda, we can't open it up for debate and discussion. And specifically regarding student matters.
I'm just going to turn this into a conversation, I hope, then, because you have on your agenda a time for new business. And when I do meetings, new business can not only include anything that has come up to our board people in the last month as new business, but it can be added that night. And I'm sure you're shaking your head saying no, but I also didn't hear it said, that's not on our agenda for tonight, but it's on new business for next month. And you could have done that.
Dave, I'm more than happy to sit down with you to talk about how we conduct our official business, because it sounds like it's different from what your board does with your church.
So tell me then, how does that get on new business then?
I'm happy to sit down with you.
No, I'm asking you as a person right now. I mean, if you
didn't
have my email address in your system, I'm just asking, how does it get on your agenda for new business? I just want to know the process. How long does it take to get on your agenda for new business?
It would take one meeting.
Okay. So is this on your agenda for new business in June?
What are you talking about? Your comments?
What the 6 persons presented earlier.
It could be. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and questions. Any other comments from visitors tonight? Okay. Seeing none, we are adjourned. The next school board meeting is on June 3rd, and of course we have the joint village board school board meeting on the 29th.
And that's being held at the no, that's here.
And that is here.